Now. So Bruce, man, I'm a huge fan of your adventuring, so this is a real honor for me to talk to you, by the way.
I'm super stoked. We almost, and your listeners will know, we almost connected last week in person when you were out this way, but we will soon.
Yeah, man, I hope so. That'll be a lot of fun. And I think next year in April, May, I'm trying to get out in BC and stuff again, because that was way too fun of an experience for me not to go back anytime soon. So
I grew up in Southern Ontario, but I love it so much out here that I moved my mom out here.
Oh, she
lives down the road from me. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
79
awesome.
years in Etobicoke, and I got her to move to Kimberley, a town of 4,000.
Wow. That must have been a fun conversation.
It was a big move.
Yeah.
She's got deer. I really believe in that kind. It's part of we're getting way deep right off the bat, but
Nice.
Western culture, we got a lot of important stuff, but we kind of can lose sight of community and elders and kids and man, we kind of farm out our elder care, but what's more precious than this kind of ancient knowledge that people have. So anyways, I said both my dad and my wife's dad died when they were young. And I've always said to both my mother-in-law and my mom, no questions asked, you're welcome anytime. You don't even have to explain, show up at the door. You stay here for 10 years. That's fine.
Easy.
My house is your house, man. So
that's amazing.
Anyways,
that's amazing.
Mom was getting to that point where, her friends were slowing down, and I've got 2 kids and she wanted to be around them. So she bought a place that's 1 block down the street, and
nice.
it's awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. It makes sense. That's cool though. She'll be able to see your kids develop and everything. So
just the other day, my little guy Taj dropped in to see her. He was out for a bike ride and his foot was sore. So me and my other son kept riding, and I'm coming home and I'm like, hey, there's Taj's bike outside his grandmother's house. He's getting a glass of juice. She pours the bigger glasses of juice than we do at home.
I bet. That's awesome though. So with that then, tell us, me and everybody listening and watching, how did you get to Kimberley, British Columbia from, what was it? It wasn't physics, but I know it was in engineering. Was it chemical or civil?
It was Eng Phys. It was Eng Phys, yeah.
Okay.
So I grew up in suburban Toronto in Etobicoke, and then went to school for engineering. And I was totally influenced by Michael J. Fox in those days. Michael P. Keaton, wanted to be rich, wanted to do my MBA. I was like, why am I going to do commerce undergrad? I'm going to go get my engineering, and then I'll do, top floor, corner office, glassy red car, and graduated with Eng Phys. And the only thing you can do with Eng Phys is academia or research. And those weren't really my bag of tea. And I did a little consulting for a small firm in Ottawa. And I started guiding rafts on the weekends. And the one thing that I've always had is this awareness of how precious life is. It's just it can seem like it's going on forever, but I was like, man, my weekends are about 15,000 times more fun than my week. So I'm going to just quit the week and make it all a weekend in a sense.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what was coming. That led to 30 years of trips in different places. Became a writer, photographer, and so much of what I did was in the mountains and, in wilderness places that I eventually had. The reason it was specifically Kimberley was I had moved to Everest around the time, I moved to Calgary around the time an Everest trip launched, and I'd been training there, and I spent some time there. And then I was like, I want to live right in the mountains, and I need a place that is cheap because I don't want to be house poor, that's near an airport because I fly all the time, and that has a ski hill. And the mine had just closed in Kimberley, and my mortgage was $300 a month. I got a wraparound deck, view of the mountains, hot tub. I back onto the forest. I can ride my mountain bike out my back door. And it's just it's banging. It's good. And so that was a major change in my life, because the hour and a half that I used to spend in a car in Calgary, I was self-employed, but I had an office. I now spend that for 15 years. I've spent that hour and a half on a mountain bike or on skis. And that's pretty cumulative, man. So it's been a good move for me.
Nice. I bet. So then, man, just going through and we talked a bit about this last time and some crazy adventures, but I remember, and I want to ask this question right off the bat with you and dig into it a bit before we cover a lot of other good stuff. But I mentioned to you about trip dynamics and stuff like that. Specifically, what comes to mind from my recent experience was there was 1 or 2 of them who really wanted to do food style tourism, where everywhere we went, it's let's try some new food. Let's try some new food, new drinks, whatever's in the area. That's why I mentioned to you, the guys want a brewery, whatever stuff's around there. Stuff like that. And my style of adventure is very, let's go explore and let's go get lost and see what happens. And like the adventure for me doesn't quite start until I'm either about to be lost or lost. And then it's like, all right, well now the fun begins. Right.
Totally.
So have you ever experienced on trips or adventures you've gone on where the dynamics kind of been off or not quite in your lane per se?
Oh, huge. And I mean, so I've been doing trips we're pushing 35 years now. And yeah, like it's way more important to me who I do trips with than what we do. It's going to be funner if I'm with the right people than I can go on what seems like a dumb trip with some great people I love being outside with. And I could be doing the most, I would not, say I wanted to climb some crazy peak in Nepal, but the only way I could go is with 4 people I didn't jive with. I wouldn't be going. Mm-hmm. And so I've reached that time and point in my life where I can be a little picky and choosy. For instance, I've actually met a guy at a speaking event. It was an adventure event in Whistler called Multiplicity, and they had 6 speakers up and in a row that night. I just met this guy and I was like, man, I like Norm. And it turned out he was a great paddleboarder. I'm doing a lot of paddleboarding, and we've done a big trip every summer. We've been balls out. I'm going to show you. This was me and Norm. So we went around Cape Scott. This is craziness. I got this on my computer, Tom.
Yeah. Oh man.
This was 5 a.m. We waited 3 days, and it is howling out there, man.
Yeah,
we are big. So anyways, I wouldn't want to be there with anyone but Norm. And that's an example. And the other story I want to tell you is I went to Everest in 97. I was a young kind of member of the team, and the trip leader was a guy called Steve Matus from Boulder, Colorado. And he was like really reluctant to have me on the trip because he didn't know me. But I'd kind of come on to run some communication systems. I became good friends with Steve. And I remember him saying to me that, so he had done at that point 17 Himalayan expeditions, and I believe it was on Manaslu. He'd gone 1 year with a team of 4, and they hadn't made the summit, but he said that was the best trip he'd ever done in his life. And they went back the next fall with a team of 6, 4 of the same people, 2 extra people. They summited, and he said that was the worst trip he'd ever taken in his life. And so that just kind of crystallizes everything you're talking about. The people you do the stuff with is everything on these type of trips. So, when going around that paddleboard with Norm, we had to, we had a pretty precarious decision. It had been blowing hard, and no one had rounded Cape Scott. We were the first people to go around it on a paddleboard. And we waited for 3 days, and we saw a 15-minute window at 4:45 in the morning. And so as we paddled in blackness towards this point of no return, that was about 150 meters down the coast, and we're both on paddleboards, I just knew that Norm would go through the same tick list in his mind and also had that coastal experience, that our decision would be the same and it would be unspoken. We were either going to go and then we're going to make it happen, or we're going to say this doesn't feel right. And people can start making really crazy decisions as the stakes get bigger. So anyways, that becomes more important too. Like in avalanche terrain, man, if some people are all about the summit and other people are more focused, as they probably should be, on safety and realizing it's more important to live another day. You want to go with people who have the same risk analysis as you more than anything. Once you get the stakes are up. But yeah, I know what you're saying, dude. You go to Southeast Asia and you see people in guest houses and they're just bitching about their friend who's on the trip because they can't stand each other anymore. And you're just like, go your own ways, man. You'll meet people. It'll be good. Do your thing.
You'll be fine. It'll make it.
You'll be fine. Yeah.
A few minutes ago, you mentioned your appreciation for life. Like you touched on it a little bit. I'm curious, how did you develop that? Because you mentioned at a young age too.
I'm not sure. So I feel like that has always been imbued in me a little bit. I had a really good friend at university commit suicide, and I always felt like that was a mistake. And I mean, that's a crazy thing to say. Obviously, it was very upsetting for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this 35 years later now, and I still think, damn, like, dude, we I miss you, and we would have had good days. And then my dad died in an accident when I was about 28 or so. Wow. And I don't think it was those two things, but they certainly reinforced it for me.
Yeah,
That,
the perspective's huge on that.
There's only so many tomorrows, eh? I remember Michael Landon, that star of Little House on the Prairie. He died of cancer, and he said, there's only whatever you want to do it today, because there's only so many tomorrows. And I've kind of lived my life that way.
Nice. That's incredible. And that's kind of what transitioned you into the adventure man you've become today. And like, that's kind of, I feel almost hearing this, it like sparked out of the university and then working. And it's like you slowly started to develop into now that's your life.
Yeah, a couple things. Like, one thing that's weird, I find, I talk to kids a lot at schools. I've run some education programs, and one thing I always encourage people to do is think of their schooling like an education, not a job training. Like, we talk about it like university. I'm like, hey man, you're getting educated. You are not getting trained for a job. You can,
it feels the opposite though.
Yeah, totally. I took engineering physics and I failed English, and I wrote a, weekly column for the Globe Mail and a bunch of books, and I didn't do well in art, and I've, shot photos for Nat Geo and other people. So that Eng Phys, I mean, it was important for me, but it was also like, it taught me how to work hard. It taught me why the sky's blue. It taught me how electricity works. It basically taught me to figure out problems, right? And that's what education is about. So I think I partially got that when I was going to university, but yes, totally. I had that moment where I was like, whoa, the rafting's amazing. I don't love what I'm doing. And luckily I had no costs. Like, I didn't have a leased car. I didn't have a mortgage. I was free. So I had a couple of grand in the bank, and that's all I needed. I could eat food. I could drive my rusty pickup out west and figure it out.
Nice.
And so then the next 30 years were really a evolution of me following what interested me. And I don't want to say my passion, because that passion gets overused all the time. But yeah, it was like, I made specific decisions. If I could, go to the same environment and guide again, or become a junior guide somewhere else, I usually went, like, I spent a season on the Canadian coast, and I went to Belize, and I went to the Alps. The one place I've returned to a ton is the Canadian Arctic, because I love the Arctic. I love the Arctic, but I'd also go on a lot of different rivers and in different crafts, canoes, kayak stuff. So yeah, to me, growth was important, and I wanted to do new things. And so, yeah, I could have never, when I left engineering, my engineering job, just post-graduation, said, this is where I'm going to end up, here in this room, doing the things I do. Yeah. And so that I was talking to a young guy today who was like talking about his future. And I'm like, dude, don't try to see that. Just, if you can satisfy yourself that today, what you're doing is important, and it's satisfying your curiosity and your interests and your passions and desires, that's perfect, because that's going to lead to something, and you can never foresee that path. And it's crazy making to sit here. Like, he was thinking, am I going to want to live in this city 20 years from now? And I'm like, dude, you don't know what city you're going to be in 20 years from now. Yeah. All you need to know is, this fall, does that feel good to you? And right. And then you should.
Nice.
So
wow, that's incredible. With that, how did you actually know something else? What was the craziest experience you had in the Canadian Arctic? Like, what's that all about? Because I've never been up there in the country. I've been out east, out west a few times, but I've never been up north. So what's that like? The
Arctic is a big land. Let me see if I can show you. Can I try to show you something here? Let me see if I can do this, man.
I love this part. It's very interactive.
Let me see if I can bring this up. I'm going to bring something up here. And you don't need Spicoli right now, but let me, I gotta go. Spicoli is our common vision. Actually, it's on this one. Here we go. Sorry, man. I got a few things going on here. I'm going to show you a couple things. So, yes, that was me graduating from engineering physics. And then, the Canadian Arctic is big. And so this is on the Tatshenshini River. I spent probably 1,000 days on that river, but, sorry, we went to Africa and the Himalayas.
Yeah, we'll get to those.
We'll get to those things. I really wanted to show you. Oh, man, dude, I apologize to your listeners. I'm going to go scream backwards through a few things here. And then we're going to take off Nail the Basics, because you don't need to know that. That's me, blah, blah, blah. Here we go. We're getting to the Arctic now.
Oh, wow.
This is a lady who got lost. She bought that Go-Go Girl, and then we didn't see her again. Here we go.
Oh, please tell me that's not a live photo.
Yeah. So the Arctic is big, man. It's a big. So the reason I wanted to bring this photo up is because people go. You go to Toronto and you can kind of go to Queen Street, or you can get the feel for it. But the Arctic takes time, and it really takes getting away from Whitehorse or Yellowknife. But this is a land of incredible scale, of unimaginable beauty. It's the land of the midnight sun. It's the last frontier. It's got the history of the gold rush. And so I say it's a relenting, unforgiving place, but it is. There we go. That was a little bit on the Arctic, but I went up there, and the wild was so incredible. We're seeing grizzlies every day, and we don't have wilderness like that in the South, even in BC. So as Canadians, we have this gem to the north of us. And I've traveled to 92 countries or something in the world. Nothing compares to the pristine nature of the wilderness we have, certainly in a boreal sense. No, there's nowhere else. It's even close, not even close. And so
you've done camels in the desert and everything, and still.
Yeah. No, I've paddled Borneo's coast and Greenland and everywhere. But the Arctic's amazing. And so it's something, a responsibility we have as Canadians. It's part of our natural inheritance. But you should definitely check it out. Crazy things, there's been lots. That lady getting lost was one, lots of bears and things.
Yeah, what do you do? Like, did you guys you had bear mace and a gun, I'm assuming?
I've done a couple trips with Alaskan trips, and we had guns. But as Canadians, you can't carry a gun in the national parks. And those are... So we have bear spray, and our biggest protection is the number of people we have. So there's never been a documented bear attack on more than 4 people, grizzly bear attack on more than 4 people. We have 15. So people stay together, we're good. I've carried bear spray for 30 years. I've sprayed 2 things, a dog and a cow. The cow was in my camp this summer. I couldn't get it out. It was going to trample my kids in my tent. And I was like, to my wife, I'm like, I got to paint this thing space orange, man. I can't take it anymore.
Oh my God.
So I was like, sorry, man, the cow's getting spray painted, and the dog would chase me every day on my bike. So I finally sprayed the dog and didn't come back.
Oh man. Well, yeah, no kidding, man. I got bear spray for the trip. Thank goodness didn't have to use it. There is an incredible book, just as an aside, called Bear Attacks or Causes and Avoidance. It's by Stephen Herrero. And that is the Bible. And so to really understand why a bear may be aggressive against you, trying to understand if it's a black bear, if it's a grizzly, what situation's going on, that book is the Bible, man. So I've spent a lot of time reading that. Jeez. How'd you get to the Himalayas? Like, how did that trip kind of transpire? Because we talked a bit about that, but we didn't want to go into it quite yet. I didn't want to save the reactions for live, because that's wild.
So the first time I was in the Himalaya, I'd actually graduated from university, and I Nordic ski raced when I was at university, and a couple guys on the team had gone to Patagonia, and I remember they'd had Helly Hansen jackets, and it seemed really cool. They were sponsored. I was like, oh, we got to do something like this. And this road called the Karakoram Highway had opened up from China into Pakistan on the far side of the Tibetan Plateau. It was basically brand new. Through extraordinary mountains. And so myself and a buddy decided we would go and bike that. And then he called me about a month before we were supposed to leave. And he's like, Bruce, man, I fell in love. I'm going to get married. I can't go. And I was like, dude, seriously? And so I was like, I'm going to go. And so I had a mountain bike, and I flew to Pakistan. It was my first trip overseas. It was around the time Benazir Bhutto was arrested. There was insanity. There were camels in the streets and gunfire. And I went north and spent 2 months in the Karakoram, which are the big range that just at the western end of the Himalaya.
Yeah. Okay.
And those are incredible. That's mostly Ismaili Muslim in the north, and very gentle. They follow the Aga Khan, and beautiful people. And then I came down and went through India, and then up into Kathmandu, and I went to Annapurna and through parts of Nepal into the true Himalaya. But the trip I think you're alluding to was 97. I'd been guiding up north, and I had applied to be a cook on an Everest expedition, and they decided they were going to take a Nepalese cook, thank God. But I wrote them back and said, I got to come. What do you need? And they're like, we need a satellite communication expert. So now my Eng.Phys degree came into good use. I'm
Nice.
like, yeah, that's me, man. I can do the satellite for you. I
Even
got
better.
it.
Yeah.
I'm tight, right? So they took me, and I went with the Canadian team in '97 to the South Side Everest, and that was the first of many trips to the Himalaya, and really the first real chance for me to get to know the Sherpa people who are so extraordinary. Not really. I mean, we'll eventually get to this book that I've written and this trip I took my family on. But
questions about that one for sure.
That really started my great admiration for the people of the Himalayas and my comfort with Himalayan Buddhism and my curiosity around Himalayan Buddhism. So
interesting. Yeah, that's something that's always intrigued me, because there's a lot of things with that area of the world that I've yet to explore, and that's where COVID kind of plays a part in the reason I went out west and not to South America. Because I'm trying to do every single country. So when I hear, like, in the world, regardless of what others kind of say of, oh, you shouldn't really go to Liberia, but
you got a big list, man.
Yeah. So so when I hear people talk about that, like those areas of the world, and you mentioned Pakistan and then those trips, that's kind of it's getting me going. I'm like, man, like I want to go, but we're limited right now.
There's a lot of amazing places, yeah, for sure.
So with that, what has been like your craziest 24 hours on a trip that you've experienced?
Wow. Craziest 24 hours. That's like I've had crazy 15 minutes. I'm going to have to say probably, so I was in 99, I was in Ethiopia with a Nat Geo team. We're going to do a raft descent of the Blue Nile. The Blue Nile had never been fully descended. A guy called Blatchford Snell, who was a British explorer, had been there in 68. And then Ethiopia had been through 30 years of the Reign of Terror, and they've been closed down. And so it was just opening up. And anyways, we had a 5-day walk into the river with a lot of gear. And we were crossing a tributary. It was quite muddy. And I put my camera bag down to take some photos. And I was like, that's so weird. My camera bag's floating away. And I'm pretty usually cautious with my camera bag. It was open, so I kind of freaked out. But then I was like, holy shit, the river's flash flooding, and like mules are getting swept away, and porters are getting swept away, and people are freaking out. And we finally get everyone on the other side. And it was intense. We didn't lose anyone. We didn't lose any gear, but this river came up like 5 feet in like 35 seconds. Jeez. It was just nuts. We get on the other side, and everyone's both stressed out. So we set up tent camp. And I guess we had some armed guards with us. It was kind of a tenuous situation, and they must have started drinking. And I was asleep in my tent, and I just woke up to gunfire, just like Kalashnikov, AK-47. I could see the muzzle flashes. And so the first thought is, now I'm thinking, I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, someone's raiding our camp. I'm like, okay, so if someone's going to shoot into my tent, should I like get in a ball in the center, or should I like lay out in a straight line along the wall? Where's the most likely point the bullet's going to miss me,
Yeah.
Anyways, everyone starts unzipping their tents and eventually go, what the fuck is going on out there? And I guess a mule thief had come to camp to steal some of our mules, and he'd taken one mule, and he came back, he got greedy, and he took a baby, and the mother went nuts, and it woke up all the drunk armed guards who were naked and running around firing their Kalashnikovs into the night. Luckily, the mule thief got away, and no one got hurt, and we got the mules back. And so that was a fairly crazy 6 hours there. I don't know if we could keep going.
Oh, wow. Man. A mule thief?
Yeah, someone came one of those mules. I mean,
I've never heard of that. How do they manage that? Do they just like wrangle them up?
Just gonna raid. I had horses stolen from me on Mongolia. Animals get stolen lots. So yeah.
Wow. What was Mongolia like?
Mongolia. I took my wife, and we'd never ridden horses before. I convinced her we should go and buy 3 horses and ride across Mongolia. We rode up to the Russian frontier to go in search of these reindeer people who were these kind of ancient nomadic herders. And we took riding lessons, and we bought a bunch of horses, and we spent 70 days. Ultimately, horses got stolen, and we ended up buying a motorcycle after that and riding around. But
nice.
I had a pretty good horse myself by fluke, because I'm 200 pounds. So the guys who we bought our horses off, you need a half decent horse. And the Mongolians, they'd all look like horses to us, but I rode into the valley, and like everyone's driving a Ford Escort, but that dude's on a Mustang, and we'll take it. So they came in the night, and that was the last I saw of my horse.
Wow. What inspires trips like this for you? Like they all seem very different, and that they don't really have much of a connection to the other.
Yeah. Well, curiosity for sure. And I just love wild places. And so I look for anywhere there aren't roads going on the map. I look for places if I buy The Lonely Planet and I can't find something in that, then I'm like, well, now I'm on the right path. If I'm looking and there's all types of entries on Instagram about a place that I'm not so interested in going, but there's definitely places that are off the map that and so as soon as that's happened and it's a wild place, and I start thinking, well, how can I move through that environment? Like, am I going to use horse, or am I going to use bicycle or skis, go in the winter? What's going to make sense to try and travel in that region? So
that makes sense. Now, from the few times we've the times we've chatted on Instagram and back and forth now and over the phone, you've always had an enthusiasm, a very like magnetic enthusiasm about you, especially when talking about the adventures and the experiences you've had. How do you maintain that?
I guess all I can say is if it's not faked, like if I was trying to get enthusiastic about some software driver that you could install into the kernel of your laptop, I'd be like, oh dude, I don't know, reboot, turn it off, power it up. But I don't know. Yeah. It's honestly, it's not forced. And I think we all go through life and we have ups and downs, and it's not. I remember when I was young, someone said, "Don't pray for an easy life, pray to be a strong person." I thought it was a kind of good quote, and I've had all types of challenges. I got a sick son right now, and he's been sick for a while, and certainly like wears at my wife and I, but that doesn't mean, he deserves us to remain enthusiastic. Absolutely. So no, I've been lucky, man. It's part of my personality.
Nice. So how
my wife will tell you she's had enough of it.
Yeah, I bet. It's too funny. So when we were talking the first time, you mentioned 95% of your, or 5% of your time makes up 5% of your income with the speaking and the writing and that kind of job, I guess, like that kind of work, let's say, because it honestly sounds more fun than it does sound like a job. To be honest, at least from like an outside.
Yeah, no, of course, yeah. The less job like something seems, the better, I think, Yeah, there's downsides to it. Like, I never know if it's a long weekend. I'll be writing all these people. I'm like, what the hell? Why is no one like getting back to me on email? And I'll be like, oh, Jesus, Thanksgiving or it's Easter or something. I have not had a separation between work and life for 30 years. If I have stuff I need to get done, I'll bring my laptop into my room and work on it. But I don't feel guilt. It's like, the other night I was writing some captions for photos that are going to the Banff Festival, and it's a fun thing for me to do. It's a bit of an obligation, but it involves stuff that I enjoy. So I think if anyone can find ways to do stuff that leaves them enthusiastic, what a gift that is, right? Because it allows you, it ceases seeming like work. The separation between this is my life and this is my work time is a Western construct that is not always that healthy, I think, in a way. So anyways. Right.
Interesting.
But you were asking about that balance between. So I mean, the backstory, just for your listeners, is so I started guiding, and then I started selling photographs, and then I wrote a book, and the thing sold. I couldn't believe it. Then I started writing too, but and that was fine for a decade or more, 15 years. But then I had kids and things, and one of the challenges I see with my friends who are full-time photographers and full-time writers is there's an enormous pressure to continue putting food on the table, and they start shooting things like weddings that they don't like, or they start writing stories about stuff that doesn't interest them, like, shoe review for the fall or something, because they need to keep working. And so this weird thing happened to me that I started public speaking to corporate audiences maybe 20 years ago. And it started because I'd done an education program in Arabia, and we designed curriculum for kids in Calgary. And I came home, and schools would be like, "Hey, can you come and tell us a story?" And I'd be like, "Sure." And parents would be there like, "Dude, that was pretty good. Do you want to?"
Yeah, I want to hear about the story after.
Yeah, they'll be like, "Come to your Christmas party, and we'll give you $500." I'm like, $500? Are you kidding me? And then this lady called me one time. She's like, "I'm an agent, and I need to represent you, so meet me at the Hyatt." And that was 20 years ago, and I have.
Wow.
So I mean, if you list the top 3 fears people have ahead of cancer, speaking in front of a large audience. So I don't know if that is the reason why public speakers get paid an unusual amount. I don't want to give the idea that I don't think hard about my content and I haven't worked hard on the craft. But that being said, what speaking has done is given me the freedom to write about the stuff I care about, to photograph the stuff I care about. It gives me the freedom to go away for 4 or 5 or 6 months every summer with my kids and then just come home. And the speaking, typically conference season is fall and spring. And so we're just going into the fall conference season. I have 3 conferences this week. Now it's weird, COVID, it's all virtual. That's why I have these graphics and things I was showing you.
Practicing
and luckily, practicing them. Exactly. Thank you, Glenn. Your audience has been awesome, man. I'm sure ready. I'm ready. So, the weird thing there is, I don't know if it's a 5-95 split, but speaking takes up a small amount of time that I do, but it provides a huge amount of that income. And it just gives me the safety net that I can, I just spent 6 years writing a book and I'll make more in 1 hour speaking than I would in a 6-hour process of writing a book. So, and my books are like bestsellers and they're published in Canada, in the US and Germany and Australia, New Zealand. And it's still, you don't make a lot of money writing is a sad truth. We don't pay our artists enough, and all your artist friends will know that. So. Yeah,
it's a sad truth, but sad truth, but it is it's what you make of it.
Everyone who's in the gig economy finds a way to supplement it, right? Maybe they waitress, maybe bartend, maybe they do whatever. And by fluke, the thing that I found was doing this corporate speaking. So
nice. And how'd you get into that? You said it was after the education or after designing the curriculums, and then it kind of people would slowly get in contact with you to go forward, and then that's kind of how that built.
It wasn't something that I shot to do. It was just something that kind of organically grew. And we'd ridden camels across Arabia, and we'd had an education program, and it ended up going to all 22,000 kids in Calgary. And in the time after we came home, it had been quite a big deal in Calgary. It had been in the newspapers, and the kids had all been following. We'd been sending updates from the desert. I would show up at schools. They'd ask me, "Hey, can you come speak to the kids?" There'd be 500 kids there. I'd show some slides.
Nice.
And then parents would be there, and they were like, "Wow, that was pretty good." And so it just kind of spread by word of mouth, and was one of those fluky things. And as I said, this agent approached me, and I was like, I remember she said, "I look like Anne Murray," and she did. I went down to meet her at the Hyatt. There she was, and she's like, she's like, "Do you want a beer?" I'm like, "No, I'll have an orange juice, man." I was like, too early in the day for me. And she's always joking that she got this adventure guide. He had her orange juice. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, I still talk to her now. Yeah. 20 years later.
Oh, no kidding. That's wild. So when it came to creating this education program, what went into it? Like what kind of roles or what role did you play?
I joined that Everest team late, and they'd had an education component that when I joined and I was sending information back to the school kids, I realized these teachers are paying $139 so that they can teach their kids about Everest. I'm like, this is like highway robbery. Teachers have no money. We can't be taking money from them. So when we did the next program, I said, and I was part of it from the start, we all agreed, we're going to provide this for free. We're going to provide it for any teacher around the world. We're going to get instant translation so kids can do projects together. There was a Canadian company that was doing that at the time. And so we hired teachers in Calgary to produce core curriculum, kindergarten to grade 12, in fundamental subjects, math, science, physics, whatever. And then we provided it as PDFs and Word documents online for teachers. And so that's how it started. And our role in the desert was, the kids would occasionally ask us questions, or we would have interactions with them, or we would supply information, maybe daily temperatures and amount of water we were drinking, so they could graph things and do other projects around it. Nice. So that's how it flowed out.
Now, how would you say, in comparison now to the education system, or with what we have now, especially let's focus on that, on how high school is now, how would you alter that to better set people up to discover their passions earlier? Because honestly, I think that's the issues we kind of face, especially now I knew what my passion was. I have the idea of it, but then it's cultivating that into something that you could form. I don't like the word career too much, but a job per se, something that you can formulate an income to live the way you want to live, let's say.
Yeah, that's a tough question. And I touched on some of the principles that I believe in terms of like, I can't remember if I think I might have said this to you another time when we weren't recording, but this idea that I always see life as a river and not a ladder. And I think like kids get introduced to this ladder model, and it's like, okay, you got to get these certain marks in this course, and that's going to allow you to get into this university, and that's going to allow you to get a job at this firm, and that's how you're going to get to where you need to be 40 years later. And that's such a bogus model. It's like you're kind of going over this way. It's kind of interesting. Then you flow that way. And the problem with the ladder model is it just makes you feel like you're making a decision in grade 11 or 12 that's about the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. And you aren't. You're going to make another 100 decisions, and all of them are going to add up to the life that you lead. And so when you ask about like how can we help kids do that, I really think just that fundamental idea of trying to, whether it's the university application process or whether it's through counseling or whatever, is help kids to know that you aren't choosing your whole future right now. You're making one choice out of 100. There's going to be lots more. If you don't like this choice, you can change it, and you're going to make other choices. And who would have ever said that going into engineering physics is going to lead you to be a writer and a raft guide and a public speaker? No one, right? They would have said a million other things. Zero. Yeah. So if anyone's listening and they have those stresses pre or post kind of going into secondary education, just don't feel like this is like the iron shackles are going on and you got to do whatever you've committed to. Right now, you're just going to learn something, and you're going to learn other stuff. You're going to learn it formally and informally. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I'm like, I've thought about it to a bit of a parallel, and with what I say in like a very, very, very short answer when like younger friends or cousins or family members or people ask this, be like, well, I made my decision, and I think other people, best case scenario, especially if you don't know, is what do you want to learn about? Go that way.
Totally.
It's simple, but it's I find, to your point as well, like with that, learning is the biggest part in terms of what you're passionate about, and then that kind of helps you build the skills that you're going to eventually be able to turn into a form of income for you and your family. So
really all you're doing at university is learning how to learn, because like tell me anyone comes out and they don't have to relearn at all on their job, whether it's software or whatever it is. I mean, you're just learning how to learn. And so, if we could even share that with kids, we'd be putting them in a good spot.
Absolutely. Now, one thing, have you, in that transition, that made me wonder, have you ever been told like you can't do something? And then
all the time, man.
How do you react to that?
Yeah, just watch.
Just watch. Easiest thing ever.
I'm like, I'm not worried. I went down to Borneo with my wife, and they're like, there's no way you can paddle on this coastline. It's totally out of limits. Well, I went to the internet cafe and downloaded the Nat Geo letterhead and forged a letter that said I was on assignment, took it to the head of police and said, man, I need a permit to go down the coast. He's like, well, here you go. Boom. And off we went. So I never let anything get in my way, man.
What's going on?
Just find a way around it. Rules are made to be broken, brother.
That's fair. So, well said, Bruce. Well said.
So, lots of people have said you can't do things, but I would never say that to anyone for sure.
So now, one thing I did want to talk to you about, and it came with, and this is one of the things that I thought about a lot while researching you, and then while looking in and trying not to research too much, while at the same time, right, find balance. So it's still a curiosity. What does the word or the term adventure mean to you? Like, when does that become an adventure? I mentioned how right at the beginning, when I'm about to get lost, that's when my kind of adventure begins. What about you?
Yeah, I'd say it's an adventure as soon as the outcome's uncertain. If you know what's going to happen, then it's not an adventure, right? You're just going through the motions. As soon as there's some uncertainty there, then it's an adventure. Adventure is basically just navigating uncertainty in whatever form, in your back garden, and you go going to the store, or however you do it. It doesn't have to be in Pakistan, but
it doesn't have to be in Pakistan. Nice. Now, you did a short film called Lifer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You've been doing your research.
Yeah, man. That was incredible. Like, I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to talk to you about what kind of inspired it, because I was looking and watching it back and trying to think, like, okay, where did he pick this idea out, and why is this the story you wanted to tell?
So I was at a film school, and I was going to this monastery with my family, and I thought maybe I want to make a film about that time. So and I was a stills photographer. I thought maybe I want to shoot some video. And basically that film school was an outdoor adventure film school in the Colorado mountains, and we went with 10 young people, filmmakers, up into a hut, and we had 3 days to make a film. And everyone's like, man, who's going to ski this gnarly line? Who's going to huck that cliff? And, they're thinking about crazy stuff. And I had been running some film festivals. It's called the Dirtbag Film Festival where I live. And both through my writing and my photography, what became so clear to me is that story trumps everything. I would have people send me submissions. They'd have guys hucking 100-foot cliffs, and they would be paddling class 5 whitewater. But if there wasn't a story, it's just adventure porn, right? You just don't care eventually. Yeah. We see so much of that. Yeah, and what we care is what happens to our friends and our family. And so we were going into this hut, and I'm just talking to Nasa, who's one of the teachers, and she starts telling me this crazy story. And I'm like, stop. That's what I'm going to film. And you're just going to tell me that story. Yeah. And then I'm just going to put some B-roll around that to make, to give some texture to it. But, wow. She'd kind of had that type of revelation of how important life was, and she'd gone through, some pretty intense experiences.
That 6 figures at Microsoft?
Yeah. Yeah. So that was,
crazy.
That's what you remember. If I shot people hucking off 30-foot cliffs, you'd be, whatever. I've seen people huck off other things. Yeah. So yeah, it's all story, man. When you're writing or shooting, it's all story.
Wow. Now, with that, what makes a good, I guess actually you already answered, but what makes a good film festival to you? Because I know you mentioned the story with the film and everything, but you put on your own film festival. How was that?
Yeah, it evolved organically. I live in a smallish town, and the town had been going through somewhat depressed times, and we called it was a weird kind of confluence. What happened? We called it the Dirtbag, and we realized that people who lived here were proud of being dirtbags. Like, I mean, I moved here from Calgary, and I was playing hockey with oilmen, and they all had like, $1,500 suits and fancy cars. And I came to play hockey here, and the guys were like, oh yeah, I was out in my quad last week, shot myself a big elk. And they're like still covered in blood. And they got like, I brought an elk sausage, man, for after the game. And it was totally different. And the reason this film festival was successful was it gave some identity to our town, and it gave people a sense of pride. And it allowed people, our whole goal was to tell local stories and show up. We had amazing photographers here. And basically what had happened was I was inviting the photographers over to my house, and we were showing slides on the walls. And I was like, Jesus, we got people here shooting for Reuters and shooting for Nat Geo and shooting for all the, really, really high-end photography. Mm-hmm. We should put on our own festival. And we did it in the local school, and it went crazy. We had some big, big years of that. And so that was really fun. And then, of course, there's all types of other film festivals in different places, and it's hard if you have something as big as Banff that goes around the world on a world tour. It's not as personal as a Dirtbag was. Banff's lucky because they've got a huge name now, so they attract the very, very best filmmakers and other things. So I was on the jury a few years ago for the films at Banff. I've been on the jury for the writing, but I watched 196 films over the space of a few days, and you quickly learn what makes a great film and what doesn't. And these were the ones that made it in, and these were all great films, but people are doing amazing work. And so, shout out to Banff. They have the best in the world for sure.
No kidding. The last few years since COVID, no, because I don't think they're doing a virtual one this year, I believe, eh?
They are, brother. You got to be there because I'm doing a presentation in it.
Oh, geez. I got to double check when that is.
I'm all big night. You better be there. It's October 31st.
Okay, I knew it was this month. I was just like, it's soon, but okay.
You know what? It's October 31st, like November 8th or something, and my thing will play for the whole 9 days, so you can watch it on demand anytime.
Okay, easy. Okay, I'll be punctual even no matter what. So
it's all good, man.
Easy.
It's a new world. We're figuring out the virtual.
Yeah, no kidding. Hopefully I'm sure it'll go smoothly though. Like, it looks like it's like Banff, like you said, big name. Like they have the tech knowledge, though. They've got it figured out.
They're going all in. Yeah, they're going to do a good job for sure.
Now, what can you tell me about your presentation that you're going to do? If you can.
So yeah, totally. So I've actually recorded it already. I went out to Banff, and I was on the stage, the empty stage, had the slides up behind me, and I basically, so my book's in the book competition this year, and usually they have several book presentations, and I'd been scheduled before COVID to do the kind of the book night presentation on Thursday night of the festival, which is one of the big nights. And so they said, why don't you come out and record a virtual talk? So I did a half-hour talk, and then I actually have a half-hour Zoom call with John Valiant, who's the author of the Golden Spruce and the Tigers, and just an insane writer, and a really unreal guy. And so we have a chat about the book, because John read it, and he did what's called blurbing it. He wrote one of those endorsements you see on the back of the book. And so, opening night is a talk about some of the themes and ideas in my book, and then me and John go a little deeper into it.
Nice. That's a perfect transition then. So tell us the inspiration for the book. Is that from what I know and I'm at the part right now where I did most of the driving, so it was tough to get one of them to read it. Where I was trying to do that the whole time. But I'm at the part where you guys are watching back the footage, and it's with your son and the autism and trying to convey how to tell him about it.
Okay.
So I'm at that part.
So you're well into it for sure. I mean, in a nutshell, about 6 years ago, I realized I was really distracted and, looking at my iPhone and all the crap coming out of Twitter and stuff. And I had this interest in Himalayan Buddhism, as did my wife. And when you have kids, it's so fleeting. It's such a perfect encapsulation of how quickly life goes by. And we're just like, let's just be fully present. Let's take them to the Himalaya. Let's go live in a Buddhist monastery. We decided not to fly there, but we traveled by surface. So we paddled down the Columbia River, jumped on a train, took a container ship across the ocean, then went through Asia. And we spent 3 months living in this monastery in basically a 8-foot by 8-foot earthen room, pretty primitive conditions in this 1,000-year-old community of monks. And it took me 6 years to write the book, but the book is really the story of our time there and what I learned from that time in a way. So just came out came out in basically September in Canada, and October comes out tomorrow. Who knows when folks will see this, but October 6th in the US.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
well,
I'm trying to publish it tomorrow. I'm going to edit it, whatever, a little bit here, and then throw it up, and I'll send you all the links and stuff for the YouTube. I'll share it on Instagram, especially with the book stuff. So
I'll fire it around too, for sure, man.
Awesome. Because that'll be, I'm intrigued to finish it. And I'm also really excited just to see how it's received. Because I was thinking back to when I started it, and I was like, man, there's a lot of cool stuff. And then I started writing down things I wanted to touch on. And one of them was, you guys separated. I can't remember quite where you were when you did this, but you guys separated the essential things you needed for the trip, and you just got rid of the rest. And I think the word you used was abandoned the rest of it. Okay. So I don't know if that part was changed or whatever, but you abandoned everything. But you weren't at your house when you did this.
Well, we've been traveling for a bit, and you know what this is like. You pack your backpack and you go to Europe and you think you need all these things. And after about 3 or 4 weeks, you're like, I didn't need half this crap. And so, sometimes you drag it around with you because you're like cheap and you're like, I can't, I bought this funny sun hat, but I'm never going to wear it. You're just like, you should throw it out or give it to someone, And so the way we were traveling was we had 2 kids. And so my wife held both their hands, and I had 150 pounds in duffel bags, one on my back, one on my arms. It was a big load because we had everything for 4 people for 6 months.
6 months
to be in high altitude, in deserts, in super hot climates and jungles. So we had a lot of stuff and all the first aid and blah, blah, blah. So this was the last moment when we were separating before we got on a team of horses and spent 10 days crossing the Himalayas into this hidden valley where the monastery was. And we just realized we can't take anything we don't need. So we were going through the I need and I want, and we're making clear which was different, and because we're going to be carrying a lot of stuff. I remember, so I did that desert journey, and there was a fellow, we were following the footsteps of this ancient ancient, old English explorer called Sir Wilfrid Thesiger. He was still alive. He was 88 at the time, and I went and met him lots of times. And he had a quote that said, "The more possessions you have, the more you're robbed of your freedom." And I always thought it was a great line because I didn't get that really at first. I remember my mom talking about how beautiful it was to be in Europe with a backpack. And I'm like, no, man, I want like a TV, a fridge. I want like, a Nintendo. I need a lot of stuff. But even if you have stuff and you aren't even thinking about it, or, it's just in your garage, it's in your room, it's stuff. And the less stuff you have, the more free you are. So we were going for ultimate freedom at that point.
No kidding. It's that minimalist lifestyle. Yeah.
Well, I mean, especially because we were just going to be carried on our backs, and we had 2
especially
kids.
at that point,
man, all we need is basically food, tent, headlamp, little first aid, and we should be good.
Yeah, first aid, I think, is something that I almost think is overlooked sometimes. Like, I've been sent back because we didn't, on like canoe trips, I've co-run or been like the secondary or the number 2 on the trip, and leader didn't pack the first aid kit properly, and like I didn't check it properly, or whatever the communication happens in those moments of high stress right before the trip, and then you have to get sent back 2 days early because somebody cut their leg open. You don't have butterfly bandages.
Yeah, totally.
So, yeah.
Well, we had 2 young kids, so we had a lot of stuff. I put some stitches into a kid. I don't have a picture I can show you, but one of our monk kids cut his head open, and I put 4 stitches in his forehead. That was pretty intense.
Jeez, what happened there?
I think one of his friends pushed a rock down the hill, probably trying to scare him, but ended up hitting him in the head. And he came to us, and he was in our room, and yeah, you could see his skull. He had a huge hole, and
oh my.
There was not too much to do but get out the sutures and start sewing. I'd seen a Sherpa sewn up pretty good with 79 stitches in his face, and I kind of remembered how it went down. So we went to work.
Oh, thanks.
Wow. Yeah, it was intense. But then the bond between me and that kid was incredible.
Yeah.
He hung out with me. It was super cool.
Nice. That's amazing.
So, yeah.
Now, what significance do kids play in your life now?
Well, I got to. So I mean, I think having kids makes you aware. I don't want to say of this eternal cycle of life, but when you're 30 or whatever, you're like, take them or leave them. You get on a plane and you see someone coming down the aisle with a kid, and you're thinking, oh God, I hope they're not sitting beside me, or the kid's not screaming or kicking the back of my chair. Now I see people with kids, and I'm like, hey man, maybe they need a hand. How can I help out? Are they okay? And that's something I've learned in Central American and South American and Asian cultures, where they worship the kid, they love the kid. I've always been interested in kids, and now that I have my own, I think I'm unshackled in terms of connecting or talking with any kid that I meet, because kids are amazing, and they've got lots of insights, and they're interesting, and I think they understand if we value them, and they understand, I understand people are busy, and we want to put them in daycare and see them as a hassle and get them out of the way sometimes. And it's a tough job being a parent, but
yeah, I bet.
Kids need to be loved. Kids need to be loved, man. And so when I brought Bodie home, he was 8 months when we took him to Patagonia, and everyone, like businessmen, construction workers, high school students, would want to hold him on the street, in the airport. I'm like, are you kidding me? Can you imagine walking around Toronto and like businessmen wanting to hold your baby? No.
Weird.
And so Bodie feels important. He feels loved. He feels like he matters. Now he's in Starbucks at the airport in Toronto, and he's like making sounds, and people are like, the fuck, like, shut up, kid, like, what, and it took him a few months to realize no one was going to interact with him anymore. Wow. Like that. But so I think it's hard to exactly capture that without a story, but kids understand when people perceive their value, so I try to value kids.
Nice. And from what I've noticed following you for as long as I have, you've managed to incorporate them in a lot of your adventures.
Oh yeah, we've taken our kids everywhere, up mountains, down rivers. We go on big trips, and even this summer we were just out on the Columbia River for 21 days. And as soon as we're in the tent together, all 4 of us, like that time when you're at home, like something always needs to be done. The eaves troughs need to be cleaned, the garbage out, the laundry,
there's always a list of something. Yeah, there's
always something, right? And then you're away in the canoe, and you're just all together, and it's just this amazing thing happens. You get so tight, and it's really, really good for our family, and we do a lot of it for sure.
Yeah, so that's definitely, because a lot of people hearing this will think, how do you manage to do that?
Well, I'm kind of I have some experience in doing long trips and a lot of time. Right. And we started smallish with kids, but I mean, My wife did some crazy stuff with me. When Taj was 8 months old and Bodie was 3 years old, we went to Republic of Georgia, bought 3 horses, and did a 70-day horse trip through like the height of the Caucasus Mountains, which was near like a war-torn border with Russia. Like it was full on.
Yeah.
But we had some experience in that stuff. And so, people have experience in other things, and whether it's going to the cottage and just not having the Wi-Fi on or whatever it is, like, I mean, it just leaving the devices away from the table. There's a lot of ways we can spend undistracted time together, going on a road trip, whether you go up to whatever, to Huntsville or Muskoka, and not bringing the devices. They're always there, right? And the thing that my kids don't have them, they're young, but the thing that's amazing on our canoe trip is my wife doesn't have them, I don't have them, and it's just us. And we're just doing the basics of life. We're cooking food, we're making coffee for the kids, we're pumping water so they can drink it, and we're hanging out. So it is a really, really special time to get away from those actually just be connected in person.
Amazing. How do you feel how well do you feel that's going to benefit for their long-term development?
Huge. They always say how do kids spell love, Time, I mean, every theory of childhood attachment is the more you spend time with them, the more things you do with them, it gives them a confidence so they can combat all those things that happen in high school and beyond with anxiety, low self-esteem, concerns. I mean, it's not to say they won't go through that, but basically as parents, you're just giving them a solid foundation, right? We're just adding rebar and more concrete to that foundation with all the kind of love we give them.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it definitely seems something that can only be beneficial in the long run. Absolutely.
Yeah. I never want, it's not that I want my kids to be outdoor explorers. They could be piano players or violin builders. It doesn't matter. But what I'm teaching them to do is do what they love, and also teach them to be present. And it's not about turning them into little carbon copies of me at all.
Nice. That's amazing. Man, how do you feel? Like, you're off the grid a bit, right?
A little bit.
Yeah.
We're in a town. We got some power coming, but we're at the end of the line, and it's forest beyond us. We walked out our back door once and walked over the Purcell Mountains to Nelson, on Kootenai Lake. It's the next stop. So that was the 12-day hike just out the back door with one of our kids. So yeah. We're on the edge of the wilderness.
On the edge of nice. How do you you mentioned briefly like how much of an impact phones and always being connected. How do you look at that as a good thing, and how do you look at as like a way we can almost manage it to being a better thing?
Well, there's a lot of amazing stuff. You can find answers right away. Oh, what was that song? Yeah. Hey, how does a Brady Bunch intro go? Yeah, play it. I think the challenge with it is the addictive nature, right? And we all feel that at the time when there's nothing going on, so we just look at our phone. We just look at our phone again. We just put our phone down and we look at it again. And for me, when I'm getting into that type of cycle, I'm like, hey, I got to break that cycle, because I want to give myself another option to pick up a book, to go and play some ping pong with the boys, maybe go chop some wood, whatever it is. And so I think the danger is, and if people watch that film, The Social Dilemma, this idea that we have like very advanced, thoughtful, powerful teams of engineers trying to make us look again. And we think our willpower can beat them, but they're pretty good too, So just understanding what we're up against. So, it's a little David and Goliath. David can win, but Goliath's out there. And the phone, you look at your stats. If you got your phone checker on, and you look at your stats at the end of the week, you're like, wow, I spent a lot of time staring at a little box, and life's irreplaceable. What else could I have done in that time? So good to have a little reality check there sometimes.
Yeah, that's one thing when it comes to like being connected, and what I think like how cool it can be. And I try to think of it as like when I was in Ecuador doing a 2-week service trip, one of the trip leader or the Midway facilitator, his whole thing was how to use social media and still stay connected, or not still, but live in the moment while still using social media. And this was almost fascinating to me. And he had these like Snapchat glasses, so he would never have his phone. I never saw him on his phone at all. But he was always like just like this and clicking, and he'd hit a video and then his whole Instagram highlight all his videos, everybody's videos from the trip. He just made a montage of them, and I'm like, when were you recording? And just hits a button and lives.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah,
it's the craziest thing. So
yeah.
But I find it with being a tool is the only way. If I think of it as a tool, it's the only way I'm forcing myself to be productive. Like I met you through it and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and we meet people through and make connections that way. But as soon as I start to scroll, and then the scrolling is when it gets not.
Yeah, no, you know what? I'm members of communities. I'm members of stand-up paddleboarding communities and speaking communities, and even this new software that I'm using where I can get great advice and connect with people. I get lots of inspiration. For me, Instagram, I'm a photographer. I love to see good photos.
Yeah.
To see, stay current with what's happening. So, yeah, no, there's definitely upsides. I'm not such a Luddite that I'm saying it's all brutal.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's definitely something, but it's photos are cool. And I'm curious now, how'd you get into photography?
Well, how did I mean, it's different now, and it's good because everyone's got a camera, right, at all times, and the iPhone cameras are amazing, and the Androids or whatever. But what happened? I bought a camera and I started shooting it. I must have shot a season on that. I had it out on the coast. The camera got stolen in Belize, and it was in a van. And I shot a bunch of that season. I was guiding sea kayaks down there, and the insurance, my parents' insurance, got me a Nikon. And I just the great fluke was that we were shooting film back then. Slides. I'd take a couple rolls of 36. I'd go on a trip in the Arctic, and every 2 weeks I'd be back at the same camp because I was doing the trip over and over. But in between, I'd have my film developed, and I'd see what worked, what didn't work. And I always encourage people who are doing photography or interested in photography to not be afraid of plagiarism. Look at images that really speak to you and try and recreate them. It's not plagiarism. You're just trying to it's going to push you technically to understand why. Did you want a blur effect? Did you want to lower the iris or the shutter or the aperture? Or what's going on, and that's how you learn. So it's not plagiarism. Just look for photos you like, and then use your own imagination to try and create more. So I was doing a bunch of that, and it just evolved that way.
Nice. Not afraid of plagiarism. I've never heard that.
Yeah.
That's a good way of putting it. And man, you mentioned a while ago you watched that Berlin video. That was a very rough, raw video. I believe you mentioned it last time, but there was where we go to Berlin, we should take a photo of the skyline, right? And that was that was the mission for Berlin, right? And
I'm trying to remember that. Where was that? Where did I see that?
I'm trying to remember if you watched it, because you mentioned you Googled me, and then you put it, and then you watched it. And this was right when we were right at the beginning when we chatted. I might have cut you off before you.
Yeah. No. It's coming back to me now. Yeah.
That was the whole point of going to Berlin, was my buddy saw a photo of a skyline that he wanted to take. And I was like, let's go to Berlin and do it.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's
not
awesome.
Afraid of plagiarism.
Man. Yeah.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
Huge.
So, I think the final thing I'm curious about, you work with MEC, with Mountain Equipment Co-op.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tell me about how that got started. How did you end up working with them and being an ambassador, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a weird, adventure's a weird world, because as you become more recognized, at first you're trying to find people to support your trips, and maybe you get a pair of sunglasses, and it seems like a huge deal. I've been doing this for 30 years. If I took you down to my basement, you were going to come here, man. And we're still going to do that. And I walked you through. You'd be like, why do you need 50 sleeping bags and 120 pairs of sunglasses and 30 pairs of skis? And I'm like, well, because people keep giving them to me, man. And I can't eat sunglasses. But I've always seen sponsorship as something that I want to provide more value. I used to try to get, a jacket or something, but now I'm like, okay, seriously, if I'm, I approach companies who or they approach me who
Mm-hmm.
have the same philosophy of wild places and endangered cultures, and we can work together. And so when MEC was building out the ambassador program, a fellow
Yeah.
called me and said, "Hey, are you interested in being an ambassador?" I was like, "Well, what's it going to take? What's it going to look like?" It was unusual for me because, you know, I'm paid a salary to be with them. It's not just gear. And so, but it's because I've created, I don't want to say it, people understand who I am, and it helps MEC. And I've tried to help MEC too through times like when they changed their logo. I've been like, man, I've talked about why my thoughts on that. And I've certainly hosted lots of events for MEC. So it's worked out in different ways.
Nice.
I've contributed to their Insta feeds and things, but a lot of the stuff you don't necessarily see. I've gone to AGMs and done presentations. I've done lots of testing on gear. So it's been a really deep and a complex relationship that I've heavily valued. I've really loved what MEC stands for. It's been really tough with the recent news about their sale, and I don't know where that's going to go, because I had a deep belief in the cooperative model, but I'm not one to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I've got a board sponsor. You can see Starboard up there on the ceiling. They're a Danish fellow who works out of Thailand. I've got boot sponsors and different people who support what I do, but MEC is one of the primary sponsors.
So with Starboard, right? That's man. Yeah. And so is that specifically
boards, by the way?
Yeah, specifically paddle boards?
Yeah, but I mean, they make windsurf. They make some windsurfing style equipment and some surfboards, but they're primarily a paddleboard company, and I've been becoming more and more, involved in paddleboarding the last couple of years. So I've been with them for about 4 years now, I think.
Nice. So where would you recommend a good spot in Canada, or even, because I'm trying to think of, my vision is like trips I want to do to, like, in the country where I don't have to spend 2 weeks when I get back. Okay. So I'm like, paddleboarding, that's like, where would you recommend to go? So
I got like 15 paddleboards, but I've got a bunch of inflatables, and you can have incredible inflatables, and they don't weigh much. And so when I'm speaking, sometimes in the spring, I'll fly to 15 different Canadian cities. And I made a commitment a few years ago to always bring my paddleboard to every city and paddle there. So I paddled in Saskatoon, Winnipeg. At first, I grew up in Toronto. Yeah, I paddled around the island one time. I remember going out to a little passage and out into the outer harbor, then the outside of the island. Yeah. I'm like, wow, it's pretty burly out here. So the next time I came to Toronto, I landed and I said, "Mom, you're driving me to Niagara Falls because I'm paddling across the lake." And she's like, "Okay." So she drove me down to Niagara. I took off 8 hours. I crossed the lake, man, by myself, and landed in Toronto Harbor. That was a tough paddle, 50 Ks exactly, from Niagara on the lake to Toronto. And I gave a speech at the Delta or something after that.
Just paddle across the lake, 50K. All right.
You know what? Every settlement is built on water, and every water is paddleable. Like, I paddle difficult whitewater, I paddle oceans, I paddle lakes. I mean, obviously people need to be careful and go step by step, but there's all types of places in every city where there's wonderful paddling, from Vancouver to Montreal to, be careful of the big rapids, but to Toronto. Just be cautious, wear a life jacket, wear a leash, learn a little bit. Stand up paddling is a source, man. It keeps you, it's like meditation, because you're standing on your feet with this just micro proprioception, and the rest of the world fades away, and you're just doing your thing, man. Yeah,
you're living in the moment for sure. There's being connected right there.
Totally.
Wow. That's wild, man, because that's definitely something I want to, like, seeing you do it. I was like, oh man, that is the coolest. Like, it's just so, it's almost weird for me to think it's as, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's as simple as just blowing up your board, body of water, go. It's
go. Yeah. Paddle, life jacket, leash, you're good.
Wow.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I paddled every city in Canada I've paddled in, for sure.
Jeez.
Wow. For sure, yeah.
And that's, seems like you don't plan it, eh? Too much ahead. I got my sweet board. I
finish the speech, and then I look at the map and call a taxi and say, take me to this harbor or wherever, and let's just start paddling. Yeah. I mean, I spent a lot of time outdoors on water, so I feel comfortable figuring it out. But yeah.
Oh, man. That's super cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Bruce, man, this was a lot of fun.
Glenn, we got to do it again. You got to come out here to see the real deal. Chop some wood.
I wanted to so bad. I still want to so bad.
We almost had it work there, and then it just got crazy. But
no, it's
we'll make it happen, man. We'll make it happen.
Yeah, it was weird, like anniversary thing. Like it's life, man. I understand completely.
Things happen. I'm rarely busy, and then all of a sudden I was. It was September 23rd. We got married right in the back garden, right outside here. So
well,
Northern Lights and a bear that day. Yeah. So,
geez. It's the best of both worlds, I guess.
It was the best of both worlds, man. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So one thing, do you happen to have I'm going to take like a screen clip. Do you have a photo of your book you can put up, or a cool photo as well?
Yeah. Let me see if I can.
I'll screen cap that, and then if you want to plug it, we can go from there. We already talked a bit about it, but if you want to finish off with some words about it, then by all means.
Cool, man. Just let me see if I can. If not, I'm just going to download it, man. Will take me through 2 seconds here. It's got to be around 3D. Where are you, buddy? Okay, man. Watch this. I'm going. This is Ecamm Live. Excuse me. My computer's looking. Here we go. Downloads. We're going to add a new. There we go. Let's see how this puts it up. I can slide that over.
Perfect.
I can wall her down. Whatever you like. We'll pull her up here a little bit. That's the book right there, brother.
Awesome. So I'll screen cap the photo now. Perfect. Easy.
Sweet, buddy.
Easy, Bruce. All right. Oh, that was I really appreciate your time, like a lot. I appreciate your knowledge and everything you have to share, and I look forward to seeing and chatting with you again.
Let's stay in touch. Let me know when you got something out, and I will definitely share it through my channels. And
absolutely, I much appreciate that.
We're due for a catch up, so
absolutely. And man, I'm looking forward to looking into Starboard, probably purchasing ordering a book because I want a hard copy for my studio. So
be in touch with me about boards anytime. I know where there's used ones and things like that, so I know what they're all about. Yeah,
well, I'll definitely be in touch with that for sure.
When you're looking, give me a shout.
Easy. Oh man, I really appreciate it.